Hello and welcome to Neighborhood Update. Today my guest is Lt Scott Carola, and an opportunity for you to meet him and learn a little bit more about the man behind the badge. Good morning, Lieutenant.
Good morning, Marci. How are you?
I am fine, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited about today's show, having got to know you a little bit better through community activities and social events, and learning about some of your interests and hobbies. But before we get into that, let's talk about the profession. I had said that this came about through my getting to know you better. And when we get to know an individual more, the perception oftentimes of that individual changes, particularly folks who, like so many of us, we are grouped into categories because of our professions and the work that we do. And if we're being honest, we know that within your profession, public perception of offices has created a problem throughout the country. And we've seen that through some of the police reform. We did that in our own city. You have been an officer for how long?
I've been a police officer with New Bedford for 23 years, and I was a corrections officer before that for 3, so all in all 26 years in law enforcement.
Okay, so you are now a veteran officer.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, yeah.
I think that's fair.
I've been around a little bit.
So, fast forward 23 years later from when you entered, how, in your perspective, has the profession changed, and how do you still stay inspired and motivated in this profession to do this important work?
Well, I appreciate the question, and I appreciate you having me on, Marci. Yeah, no, definitely, there's no question about it. Police work as a profession has changed in the way that we do things. You know, the job itself has changed very little. Our mission has changed very little, which is to help people, to protect and serve, to enforce the law. That's always been the mission. What's different is the way that we go about it. So there's been a lot of changes in that respect. And you know, when you talk about the sentiment of police officers and getting to know somebody on a personal basis as opposed to just know what they do for a living, police work is definitely one of those professions where we kind of get painted with a broad brush and we get lumped in together. So what somebody does wrong in one part of the country, we all get affected by. All police officers get affected by. So you know, that's really something that human beings do, right? When we don't know somebody personally, we make judgments based on
what you do know,
on the information that we have. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's definitely something that you know, we've come to understand, and we've also come to understand that in the past we've had the tendency to do that to others, right? As police officers, we walk into ambiguous situations, and whenever you're dealing with that kind of ambiguity, you rely on these snap judgments that you have, you know, so that it's awoken us to that as well. But really, you know, the job is the same. It's just the way that we approach things are different. You know, we have to understand as police officers that we are not an occupying force in a neighborhood. You know, some outside force that comes in and maintains order. We are part of the community, and the community is part of us.
Absolutely.
You know,
and I know you have seen, because I've been a part of some of that with you, as you engage more with the community, you see how they start to see you as part of the neighborhood, part of the community, and the way they deal with you is differently. I'm picturing you as Santa Claus. That's what I'm thinking of.
It's just a coincidence that when Santa Claus is around, I happen to not be around. It's just a coincidence. But.
And I happened to be there. It was a Christmas party for the Central American community.
Yeah.
And what a great day that was. And it was good to see so many officers volunteering, and just the joy and the appreciation that folks from the community had, at that event. So it's doing more of that.
It's nice to have those opportunities because, it's so many times as a police officer, you're just, you're a faceless, anonymous person driving by in a cruiser in a lot of these neighborhoods. And for a while, that's kind of how it became, right? We just, we go from call to call, and and the only time that we see people or meet people is at sometimes the very worst times, right? And that's not really the ideal time to meet somebody or get to know them. So when you have these opportunities outside of that dynamic where you're being called to handle something for them or handle them, and you get to see them with their families and with their friends and in an outside environment, and you get to know each other as people, that's when the really, the magic starts happening of this job and what you could do on it.
Absolutely. And now we see ourselves at a place where the mayor and the chief just announced a $5,000 signing bonus if you commit to 3 years as a police officer. When you started 23 years ago, you probably started on a wing and a prayer.
No, when I started years ago, the line was wrapped around the building for one position, and we are now, because of a lot of things we just discussed, and that kind of perception that has fallen upon law enforcement, we have to sell a job that we never had to sell in the past. It sold itself.
It was always considered a noble profession, just like firefighting. If you asked any little boy, what would you like to be when you grow up? They all said fireman or police officer. Today, they probably say it's something to do with social media, influencer. I think that's the #1 job today. But it's not just the profession of policing. It's also our teachers. It's also nursing, many professions that it's difficult today to recruit. And I think that's beyond perception. I think some of that has to do with just a younger, new workforce too, and how they view work ethics. I think a lot of that comes into play also.
Well, these positions are viewed as positions of power, which is unfortunate because I think a lot of the young generation, they don't want to have power. But what they need to understand about these jobs is we don't have power, we only have responsibility. So if you begin to change the perception and say, a police officer is not a powerful person. A police officer is somebody who's got a lot to deal with and a lot of responsibility.
As we talk about policing, it is a profession that is high risk, dangerous, and very, very stressful. So I would also think that it's very important for an officer to find ways that they can de-stress, because I think that makes you better at what you do. Would you agree? I
definitely agree. That's become a big topic within the law enforcement field is wellness and mental health. And it's unfortunate. We talk about the dangers of police work, and there's no question that this is a dangerous job, and you can be hurt or you can be killed doing it. But statistically, the reality of it is the gun that I'm most likely to be killed from is the gun that I have on my side, and that's a function of mental health. The things that we see, the accumulated stress, the compassion fatigue that sometimes sets in. After many years of seeing the things that we see and dealing with the things that we deal with, we have to really begin to embrace the fact that it's not healthy mentally. Yes. And we have to come up with new techniques, and it's not. You're not going to find peace in the bottom of a bottle, or the other things that are self-destructive that so many people turn to. And that's one good thing about this new generation. I think that they're beginning to show us that it's not about working 100 hours a week. You work 40 hours a week, maybe a little bit extra, and then you have your off time and you have your family, and they bring with them a more healthy perspective on mental health. The younger generation is, they don't carry the same stigma, whereas years ago, you wouldn't have an older police officer tell you that they were in need or that they were depressed or that they had to talk to somebody. You didn't hear that. It's something that you will hear nowadays because the paradigm has kind of shifted that way. So,
and that's good.
And I know for me, that's what brought me to art, which is, you know, what we've come to discuss today, right?
And that's a great segue, because as you look at this set today, it's just filled with some wonderful artwork. And to those of you that are watching today, I know also the set looks very different. I'm feeling the Today Show, and I'm feeling like Hoda today. So
what
let's.
does that make me?
So anyway, let's talk about some of this wonderful artwork. And so this obviously is the way that you have a calmness about you. And so I'm sure that comes from this hobby.
Yeah, no, I drew when I was a kid, and I was always very appreciative of art when I was a kid, mostly in the form of comic books. You know, I was the kid, I wasn't playing football or baseball, I was up in the rafters, you know, playing Dungeons and Dragons and reading comic books. So there's always been that, I've always had an attraction to that type of thing.
And a creative mind.
I think so. And, you know, as I got into law enforcement and police work and things of that nature, it's such an all-consuming and absorbing profession that, you know, you begin to lose a lot of the things that you had. You know, people lose friends, people lose family, people lose their interests because they become so driven to, you know, become a detective or become a supervisor, cases that you're working on. And so after about 10 years of being involved with police work, I found myself at a point where I was really starting to realize that I had internalized a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, and I had, you know, some feelings inside me that, you know, I needed to find an outlet. And I remember at the time, my oldest daughter was very young at the time, and we were taking her to an art class, and we had to go to an art store and buy her some supplies. And for me, it all started again when I went to that art store and I bought her supplies, and I saw a graphite pencil set with a blender and some other minor things that you need to get going. I said, you know, maybe I should go back to drawing. I used to like doing that. And I set up a drawing table. I bought, you know, that graphite set became a colored pencil set. That colored pencil set became a pastel set, and that became a watercolor set. And I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours behind the drawing board, you know, and
that's pretty amazing, because as I look at your work, I would have thought that you went to school for art, that you were a trained artist, and so, but you're a self-taught
I appreciate that, but yeah, mostly largely self-taught. You know,
that's incredible. Looking at the shading and just the detail of your work.
You have to go through a period where you're not very good, and you accept it and just try to improve. I think a lot of people they sit down and they try, and they're not good, and they're immediately frustrated by it and just walk away from it. You know, but if you really enjoy it and you really like it, and you have some natural ability, you'll get better and better as you go along.
I think you need a lot of natural ability, and I would say I do believe with some talent. I think some things are just genetically. I think you're just blessed with that, and I think that you were blessed with that talent. Let's look at this piece over here to my right. What I see that's interesting about that, because you talked about, you know, you do this to get away from your work, but as I look at that piece, I see your work combined in this piece. Talk about this piece, if you will, and tell us what you were trying to, what message you're sending through this.
So much of the artwork that I do, a lot of it is cathartic, right? And it's for me, it's a process of what you have, the negative feelings that you have internalized, and the negative things that you've seen internalized. You get them out of you by putting them onto a piece of paper, right? It's just, I can't explain why, but once I've created some artwork, I feel better. I feel relieved. I feel like something's off of my shoulders. So this was a drawing that I did this came at a time when I was really starting to take notice of the fact that there was an inordinate amount of overdose deaths that we were responding to on a very regular basis. And it seemed like 2 or 3 times a week we were going to a house where somebody's loved one had passed away, and drugs were involved, and we really began to see, this is around 2014, I think I numbered the fishing vessel with the year that I created it, I believe. It was 2014 is when we really started to understand the magnitude of this opiate epidemic and how this country was really in the grip of that. And also my city, my city has
Right.
always, New Bedford is a wonderful city, but we've struggled in the past with opiates and heroin, and that seemed to have returned. So I have, the whaler who represents, that's really the symbol of our city. If you see the whaler, you see New Bedford, and instead of holding a harpoon, he's holding a syringe. And there are people that are overboard, struggling in the stormy New Bedford Harbor. I have Butler Flats in the back with the light on. In my mind, that symbolizes hope. Lighthouses in a storm symbolize hope. And we have the fishing vessel that is caught against the waves because the fishermen in that community, that's always been something that they've struggled with as well. Very difficult job, as it's been explained to me by some fishermen, the pain that they get in their hands, just the ferocity of the elements out there on a boat. It's painful. They and a lot of them turn to opiates to control that. And of course, the opiates that you get prescribed to you from a physician can sometimes quickly become lead to heroin. So that's why I have the fishermen.
And so there's
represented there as well.
really there's just so much in there. And as a police officer, I know you spend a lot of time in the downtown area, and all of that is probably, you interact with many of the the residents around the bus terminal, and so all of that, you were able to bring all of that into that piece, and it really is magnificent. You could just
Thank you.
look at that for hours and just see so much more.
I got a lot of attention from it, and initially I worried about it because I don't want people to feel that I was portraying this city in a negative light. New Bedford's a great city. It's been my home. It's where I grew up. It's where I live to this day. It's where I raised my family. I love New Bedford. But it's just one problem that is common throughout all the country, but this is just the way I chose to represent it in an illustration.
And close to you, because as I said, this is what you said at this time, this was something that you were dealing with every day. And so
people, I'm fortunate that I don't have anybody in my immediate family that suffers from that. I have people that I know and care about that do, but people think that when you walk into a crime scene where we call it a crime scene, but when you walk into a death scene where the mother is screaming or the girlfriend is crying and the children are all upset, that you can just kind of go in there as an automatron and jot down some facts and say okay, and then walk away. It doesn't work like that. When you walk into one of those situations, if you're still open to your own empathy, you internalize that. You internalize that pain, and you share that pain, and you go home and you think about those kids and you think about that poor mother. So.
And so when you look at it through the eyes of the artist, what I see in that piece is compassion from your perspective. You could have, you're such a talented artist, you could draw whatever you want to draw, but that was your way of showing how you were impacted, by what was happening here, and it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Now as we look to my left, speaking about the folks that you come across with, this gentleman looks very familiar to me. I've seen him downtown. He is a homeless individual.
Yeah, he is, and he's somebody that I see as, he's somebody I like very much, but he's somebody that I see as a real modern day tragic figure, and his story is so common to a lot of the stories that are out there. When I became a corrections officer in '97, taking in people in protective custody and regional arrests, that's when I first met him. And what's really sad about him is that he's such an intelligent person. I believe he has a master's degree.
Really?
And yeah, every once in a while he would catch like a 30-day stint at Ash Street. And that's really when I got to know him, during the times when he was sober and that was out of his system. and just hearing about his story, about his, the marriage that dissolved, and him turning to alcohol, and he used to be in the mental health profession.
Wow.
As well. And when I drew this, it was after a conversation that I had with him as a police officer out on the street. And we were talking one day, and he told me that he had been sleeping on a porch in the South End, and a woman invited him into the residence to have a meal with her. And he sat down at the table, and he talked about using utensils. And he said, she gave me a fork and a knife, and I hadn't used a fork and knife in the longest time. And I just thought about that for a moment, like how far somebody could fall in our society that you don't even recall what it's like to sit at a table and eat with utensils,
Wow. And what I love about what you're sharing is, again, we're talking about how your perception changes over time the more you engage with someone, and you were able to tell me things about this person that I would see that I didn't even know. And what you did, it led you to this, and you've given him dignity. Society stripped him of his dignity just through life experiences, but you came to know this man and see him beyond his homelessness, and then to do this portrait of him. That's just that speaks volumes to the human being that you are as well.
Oh, thank you. But that's definitely it. He's somebody that you can walk by or drive by on a daily basis and ignore. He's somebody that I've had to put cuffs on, and I've had to walk to a jail cell. But we have to sometimes move beyond that, right, and see that there is a person, right, behind these things that we're doing that might be necessary. Because but we deal with people that hurt others, and we deal with people that hurt themselves. Right. And I think his true crime in life is just being sad and unable to get himself out
Every
of this
day,
hole.
But yeah.
I do. I hadn't looked at it that way, but I think that my immortalizing him was my way of saying, I see you for who you are, and I would like to do a portrait of him. So I just thought it was interesting.
So we see such a variety here. What do you love to do the most?
I like to do faces the most, and I think that the reason why is because anybody who does artwork, you want to get you want positive feedback, and you want immediate positive feedback, and the best way to do that for me is when somebody says, hey, I know who that is. I recognize that person. So when you're able to capture somebody's likeness, it's just kind of an immediate sort of, there's a selfishness about it. It's sort of like an immediate feedback. And that doing faces led me into doing art at, that I tabled at Comic-Cons. So I would do like science fiction stars and heroes and things like that. And there's, I think my main motivation for that was just the positive feedback that you'd get from, drawing somebody that another person really idolizes.
I mean, the lines, all of the lines around the eyes, even in the lips, the chapness that you've captured, the detail is just...
Thank you. That's colored pencil.
It's amazing. I know you're a family man, and you have
three. I have 2 daughters and a son.
So you have a photo with a little girl and a tiger.
That is that's my youngest, and at the time that I drew this, she was probably 3, maybe 4, but no more than that. And she was just a fearless kid, and she was somebody that was always, she would be the first one to, somebody was crying outside because they jumped off the porch. That's going to be my, that's going to be my Vicky, right? Or somebody ran up to a strange animal and grabbed it. That was my Vicky. So I've drawn all of my children, and this is was just a play on that. So I have her facing off with a tiger. I thought that would.
Did she love it? Does she love that?
I think she does. Yeah, she's at the stage now where she doesn't talk a lot, but she's at the teenage stage.
She will appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd like to think that in years to come, it's something that they hold on to in their homes. To remember.
So you have another one. Again, our profession, the work that we do, it's in everything that we do. And so I love that one of your belt.
Yeah, I have. So I drew my duty belt, and I took the firearm out of the holster, and I put all the art supplies, and that's just kind of my way of saying that there's more than one way to address a problem, and it kind of like the pen is the mightier than the sword type of thing. The pen is mightier than the sword, and a paintbrush or a colored pencil beats them all. So
Awesome.
I put that there as well. To be creative. There's an element of creativity that can help us to avoid violent situations. I always tell new officers when they come on that the best weapons that you have, they're not on your duty belt. The best weapons that you have are your mind to think, your mouth to talk to people, and your heart to be compassionate when you come to work, so that you can always. It'll lead you to do the right thing if you're compassionate. When you find yourself getting angry, we've all slipped. We're getting put in high intensity situations. I haven't always been completely calm, but it's just a reminder that we need to do that. We need to step back sometimes and be calm and
Absolutely.
talk and try to de-escalate situations. I also have a keychain there. It's a goal. It's a brain. So it's to use your brain type of thing.
And that's great advice. Great advice. So you have another photo. Pass that on that I'd like to put up here. And this is a familiar face to many in the city, and certainly those who will be viewing this show. This is Jabril Ghassan. And you told me you have never met him. Obviously you know of him. His portrait is in the
we've
library.
Never met. This is actually what got you and I talking about my art. If you remember, we were
Yes.
at the park that's named after him at an event, and we began talking about art, and I just went through my phone and started showing you some things that I was working on. And I think, as I recall, I wanted some assistance in maybe meeting him, because I have seen him out and about, and then learning the story of the Greensboro Four, and just everything that happened during that time.
Yes.
And you watch a video of the individuals who went there and sat at those counters and had their backs turned on people that really wanted to kill them.
Yes.
Let's face it, right, at that time, and just endure that abuse and the bravery that took. It's really mind-blowing, and so I wanted to I wanted to do a portrait of him and gift it to him. He's a man that's been painted by the best. There's a painting, I believe, in the downtown library of him. There's a statue of him.
Yes,
Deborah Macy,
he did
yeah,
that.
fantastic oil painting by Debbie. There's statues down in in Greensboro of the Four. So he's been sculpted, he's been painted, but this is what I can do, and this is what I chose to do.
And I think it's
for him.
beautiful. I think it's absolutely beautiful, and I think you understate the worth or the value of yourself as an artist, and I'm sure those that are watching today would agree with me on that, and I'm sure that he will absolutely love that piece. Thank you, and I'm
Thank you so
glad
much,
that
Marci.
now I can call you my friend as well.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Marci.
you. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's program as much as I have, speaking with Lt. Carola and just being blessed with all of this wonderful artwork. So thank you for watching today, and we will see you next time on Neighborhood Update.